where I came from. Everybody says you came from there. Were you born in Waycross, Georgia? He said, no. I said, okay, so your mama didn't drop you off at the hospital here. No. You didn't go into false labor here. No. You didn't even stop over and spend the night while she was pregnant. No. So I then posted the picture that Bert was so generous. He kept having his guy take pictures of the two of us. He was such a nice guy.
Cool.
And he had one, and I posted it later, and it said, one of these actors was born in Waycross.
Something in the water taught me how to crawl. Something in the water taught me how to fall. Something in my blood.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Something in the Water podcast. I'm Sean Clark.
I'm Uncle Dave Griffin, and that's Justin Mercer of Caution Light Media behind the board making this thing go. Yep. And our guest this week is our good buddy, John Youmans.
Hello there.
John is a wearer of many hats. John is a musician, an actor, a playwright, a producer. You've probably danced.
An actor.
Dance.
You
could be
call it that.
Song and dance man.
Song and dance man. And I guess you could go as far as say you're a songwriter too, because you have written songs into your musicals and your plays and
that's
so
really
forth,
what I started out doing.
Well, we're glad to have you, buddy.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Dave.
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah.
Everybody, hey. It's
So
yeah,
your
cool.
big thing, though, I guess, as far as what would you call your main bag?
I don't know. I guess it's kind of like, you say you do so many things. I wonder if I'm good at anything because
Yeah.
But now, deep down in my heart, it's a musician because, like I say, so many of the shows that I've written, they're musicals or they're plays with music.
Mm-hmm.
And so really that's what I enjoy the most. But, the acting's great too. Spend a lot of time sitting in pit orchestras, watching people act on stage. And I thought, oh God, if they can do that, I can do that. So,
Oh, okay.
just
Cool.
kind of
So
the way it happened.
did you that's how you kind of started out in the pit as a musician?
Yeah. As a really young kid, I played double reed instruments. So, that was kind of rare. As a matter of fact, I went on and
What is that?
double reed.
Sax
That's
or
the
oboes?
bassoon, the English horn, the oboe. But I also played bass and sax and clarinet. It just depended on what they needed. I never played any brass because I don't have any lips. So I was born with a lip deficiency. So, what can I say?
Well, that's interesting, though. I mean, you were on this side of the stage, and that's what impacted you. Was the other side of the stage so much watching it from the pit, and naturally, that was your progression. You said, I got to have me some of that.
Well, you're right. And I grew up around music. I had a very musical family. My mom played, my sister played, we had music all around us. So it was always, the first part of, what was going on. Actually, I kind of fell into theater by accident. I had there was a little medical thing that happened for a while. I ended up dropping out of college, and I got bored as I started to get well. And I just said, well, I can go and audition for a part. And, it just worked. So, and then I found out you could make money doing it. So,
Cool.
That's what you do.
Now, a play I've seen probably 3 times that you've written and performed in is Psycho the Musical.
Yeah.
Was that the first? Was that your first play?
That was the first thing that ever actually got put on stage.
Yeah.
And it happened as a fluke. Nancy Campbell, the late and great Nancy Campbell, who, along with her husband John, founded the Waycross Area Community Theater, and they had founded theaters all over the country, and I guess really all over the world. He'd even formed one in the compound in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia when he was over there. But they were just sitting back one day and they said, "Why don't you write a parody?" So I said, well, okay, because I had done this kind of thing just for fun, little short things. And so I thought about it, and
I love the idea of that.
well, we tried to think of, I asked people, I said, what would work, and then I kept thinking, and the Night of the Living Dead went through my head, and The Exorcist, and Rosemary's Baby, and just all these things. But Psycho just sort of fit.
Yeah.
And I had all but like 1 or 2 of the songs already written. You know how it is. You have a song, it has one set of lyrics, you change them.
Just make it fit into
Yeah, and I got to give credit to Melissa West, a compadre of yours.
Yep.
In
school together.
She sat there and she typed the whole thing as I paced back and forth and just dictated. And then we would play the recordings of the music, and I would tell her what the lyrics were going to be. And then when we got through, I would sing it and make sure it worked. And we'd take that song and those pages of dialogue to the actors that night. And then they didn't have anything else until we got there the next day with the new stuff.
Wow.
And from that, people liked it, did it over and over.
I thought it was great.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, especially from you, because
so that was done here in Waycross.
Yeah, originally, yeah.
Yeah, and what was it WACT?
Yeah. And the Downtown Waycross Development Authority,
Okay.
which Nancy was running then, they actually put up the first money for it. We were shocked. I mean, as soon as Bill West had walked out there as Alfred Hitchcock, just people started laughing, and and it got kind of rocky. If you were there, because you were there for that early stage, it was kind of like a Rocky Horror thing. They were screaming and yelling and enjoying the fact that I was killing her, and
WACT was Waycross Area Community Theater, and was that played out on the stage of the Ritz?
Down at the Ritz,
the
and
old
we
Ritz
did it there.
Theater.
And then we moved to Trembling Earth, started doing it. And we did it above KD's.
Yeah.
And it was real successful there. And then took it out to, I think in between then, took it out to Missouri and did it out there in a dinner theater. And we sold out. It was successful there. So we proved that Hicks everywhere can get it, So. And then a few years ago, I thought, well, I'd like to revisit it and update the soundtrack.
Oh.
Because when I had done it originally, I'd done it, on a synthesizer, and it was all me. And a good guy, Forrest Sloan, who was a friend of my son, he great guitar player, and we just sat down together. I said, I just want some edge on it, and he definitely put the edge on it, and it sounds great. And so now they're doing it in California, so I feel like technically I've been played in California all over the state.
So who's doing it in California?
Mask Entertainment, which is a theater group. I got a call from a guy, Chris Carver, who had actually done the show the first time I ever paid people for it years ago. And he said, if I ever get anywhere, I'm going to pay you back by doing this show.
Neat. Yeah.
And he called me up one day and he said, hey, we want to do the show out here in California. I said, okay, great. I just redone the soundtrack, so it'd be great. And then he says, there's one catch. and I hope you don't mind. And I'm thinking, oh God, what is this? What is this? I don't get any money. And that was my first thing. I don't get any money. And he said, I'm going to cast the lead role of Marion, who gets killed in the shower, with a contestant from RuPaul's Drag Race. And I'm like, I don't care who you cast, I don't care. As long as your checks don't bounce, and you do a good job, leave the script and the music intact, I'll be happy. I don't care. Do what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, speaking of money, how does that work? I'm assuming that it's about like the same thing with songwriters. We write a song, somebody covers it, they pay a certain royalty or something like that.
Yeah, it's like that with all plays.
Permission or whatever.
You just have a contract, and they pay for each production that they do.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is and how successful it's going to be. You negotiate those things as you go. So, it's a lot of the same thing. Most of the music ends up either as ASCAP or BMI, and then most shows then eventually end up being bought out by somebody like Tams Widmark or somebody who produces musicals. So that's kind of the way that.
So as the writer of Psycho. Psycho the musical?
The musical, and then it's a parody, so we can get away with it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Two Live Crew, by the way. Thank you, Two Live Crew, and the Supreme Court. Thank you for that. Thank you, Pretty Woman. I'm like, they really made it so that we can do this kind of thing. It protects people who do parody from being. Sued because
it's not like you're stealing.
You're just
something.
Having fun.
You're having fun with the theme of.
Yeah. Did you do? How many have you done total? I mean, as far as screenplays.
Oh, how many things have I written?
I'm not sure about the terminology.
Well, I mean, like shows for the stage. Actually, I guess
are called.
It's kind of hard to say in a way. Musicals, because I mean, like I wrote a musical that was done out in Missouri about Molly Brown. Well, when they no longer needed that anymore, I brought it home, and like I said, used music over again and used it as music for a musical version of A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
Your niece Gracie was in a production of it.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing like stealing from yourself.
That's right. I mean, Neil Young does it all the time.
Can't get in trouble for that. So
I do that a lot.
Hey, who's your own best source?
Right.
Who knows what you like?
Who was some of the actors in the original Psycho?
Wow, down here. Well, Rhonda Woods.
I remember that name.
She did that, and Melissa West.
Yep.
And Gus Darden was in the original cast. Oh, it's so hard. It's been so darn long. Well, it was quite funny when we won the Broadway World Awards for the production that was in Palm Springs.
God.
One of the awards that we won was Best New Show, and I laughed. I said, "Best New 25-year-old show." It's only a quarter of a century old, so brand new, isn't it? That shows you the way they look at it. It's like you're an overnight sensation. Yeah, right.
One time I saw it. This is just coming to me now that it was next door to the Ritz.
Right. That was in the Academy of the Arts, which is where Chris, who did it.
Chris Garber.
Yeah, that's the production he was in, actually. And really and truly, God bless you for saying, that you enjoyed it, because that was such a bad production.
I try to catch it every time I can. Every time you do it.
Bless your heart, because that was just a bad production. But that happens, you have good productions. Well, it had its moments. I mean, you know, you had some, you know, you still had Bill Westhead, who was fabulous. And of course, see, it's theater loud. So it's the way it works. And then and Blanche Brumbelow also, who was just great. So it was great. And Edmund Pedrick, Edmund on the keyboard over there playing these little things. You know, it's like, well, I've decided that right here I'm going to play a minor version of There's a Small Hotel. What do you think? I'm like, go ahead. And after she dies, I'm going to play a little bit of Mendelssohn Spring song. I'm like, go for it, buddy. Do whatever you want. I gave him very little direction. He was priceless.
Yeah. Edmund Pedrick was one of the greats.
He really was. And he and I, he wrote quite a few plays himself and was very musical. I mean, he was such a talented pianist. I mean, he could play anything. And we both kind of got the urge to start writing at the same time. So we would swap manuscripts back and forth. He said, well, I wouldn't change one thing except. And then he'd tell you, you know.
The plot.
So, right. Well, you know, he actually ever got me on one thing, on the Lydia Stone thing, on the Legend of Lydia. He said, here's one expression they would have never used. And I took it out.
You remember what that was?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea at all. I've lost a lot of brain cells since then. And, you know, I have no idea.
And Lydia Stone, the Legend of Lydia Stone, you've already done that. I haven't seen that one.
Well, we did originally. I was out on tour with a group out of Rome and Atlanta doing Pinocchio. And one of the actresses who was working in the show, Jenny Klein, now she's Caruso, knew a lot about outdoor drama. And I told her a little about Lydia Stone, who I'd been hearing about all my life since I was a little boy. She says, oh, that's a great story. So we just started writing, and she was sort of like the thing, but Melissa, a lot of it, I just rattled off facts and stuff. And she knew the nature of outdoor historical drama. So she would say, you need to, let's do this. So she was a great guide on that, especially, yeah. And I've added a lot of stuff to it since, but we whipped it out in a hurry. So,
for people who are not aware of Waycross, Georgia, and the surrounding areas, rich history. We're about 8 miles from the Okefenokee Swamp Park in Waycross, and the Okefenokee Swamp is like isn't it one of the 8 wonders of the world, or is it like next on the list?
I don't know.
Well, I guess as far as everyone here in South Georgia,
as far as we're concerned,
it is, and we don't care. Don't mess with us. It's the biggest thing.
But if you look at your map of Georgia and you see down in the southeast corner there,
the largest blackwater swamp in the world.
Yes, it's huge. It goes down into Florida, you know. But anyhow, Lydia Stone was a timber baroness that lived and worked in that Okefenokee Swamp as hard as any man ever would. And John has chosen to bring her to life in one of his productions, which is pretty clever.
Well, thank you. And she wasn't hard to come up with material on. I mean, like I say, I've been hearing about her since I was a little boy.
We all have, yeah.
Fully Henson, who was a mortician, but he prepared her body, and he did a lot of, you know, that kind of entertaining work for the family. And he would tell stories about her, and he was colorful too. So you really, you know, you were always thinking, boy, this woman really had to be a trip. And then the more I found out about her, Bob Hurst was a big source of things. And then, you know, people like, oh gosh, Edmund knew who she was. And just all these people, a lot of them have sadly passed.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough.
So when did Lydia pass?
She passed in 1938.
Okay.
The big events that everybody talks about in her life is that really her father came down here with General Floyd when they were having the Seminole Wars after the Wilds Massacre. If you don't know that, that's the last Indian massacre in the state of Georgia. So she came to this area, and her father became a school teacher. Supposedly, she only spent 6 or 5 days in school. It kind of varies. Said she didn't need to do that, but she could outfigure any man in the world. And she had this amazing head for numbers. And it goes that she was a giantess. She was over 6 feet tall, wore a size 11 or 12 man shoe. She started out with a cow, a sow, and $10,000. She owned all the land eventually from
Cow, a sow, and a thou.
Really,
Cow,
man.
a sow, and 10 thou.
Well, yeah. and she ended up with all that land from the swamp park all the way to Race Pond.
Wow.
Almost to the folks in line down there. And she was a trip.
She had a lot of husbands.
She had two. She had two. The first one was Gordon Stone, and they had gotten in trouble more than once for just cohabitating. So eventually they married, and he was not a real healthy man. I think he drank quite a bit. He died, and after he died, she married again to a fellow J. Milton Cruz, who was 40 years her junior.
That was Baby Doll.
Doll baby.
Doll baby.
Doll baby.
Doll baby. And
She used to pick him up, didn't she? And just sewed him up.
she just basically, the rumor goes she went out to the bunkhouse one day and early morning picked out the one she liked the best, and she just brought him on home.
Based on what?
And then loved him. Well, I mean, the sun rises early in the morning in the swamp. That's all I'm gonna say about that. And but he was young, but she treated him like a boy because she always wanted to have children. She never had children.
Yeah.
She wanted to have redheaded children. He was a redhead.
Oh, God. Checked off all the.
But he was a bad boy in some things whenever he was young.
Yeah.
He kind of flirted around, and eventually he got in trouble for shooting their neighbor and was, convicted and sent to jail.
Oh.
But Lydia took care of that.
Uh-huh.
That's a famous story. She'd been, I guess it was Governor Talmadge.
Yeah.
She bribed Governor Talmadge with a check to get a pardon. And as soon as she got him out of the jail, ball baby, she went down to the bank and stopped payment on the check.
Oh, God. Knows.
And she was a trip.
I don't think we said this yet. She was called the Queen of the Swamp.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Queen of the Okie Finokie.
Yeah.
Way back when, I don't know why we ended up at Queen of the Swamp. I think we were looking for lyrics for song, and Swamp just worked better than Okie Finokie.
So it's actually Okie Finokie.
Well, it can be we hear it all different ways, and you hear all these different stories, and we've had people go, well, that ain't exactly the way it goes. And I'm going to say, well, can you really not dramatize something that's got so much, going on? You got to put it together in a time period that people can deal with, because you could just talk forever. It was a trip.
Well, thinking about the Okefenokee Swamp reminds me of all of and this goes back to acting and everything, but thinking about all those, they weren't great movies, but they were movies, and it was a time period where Hollywood was discovering the Okefenokee. What was it, 50s?
Well, in the 40s now, the first film that was done, Swamp Water, based on the Vereen Bell novel, was actually, it had Ann Baxter and John Carradine, Walter Brennan.
That was the Walter Brennan.
Dana Andrews. I mean, really
Big
good
names.
cast.
Yeah.
And then the remake, Lure of the Wilderness, also had some pretty good names for the time. It would not have been I would say Swamp Water would probably have been considered an A picture.
Yeah.
And very unusual to be shot on location at that period of time.
Wow.
But sure enough, in the Old Ware Hotel were all these stars. I mean, you know. But of course, we had royalty who stayed there too.
Yeah. It was big times. I
It-
remember seeing the pictures of the throngs of people that would gather in front of the Lyric Theater when the premiere.
Ballyhoo.
When the movie
The-
came to town and they had the stars come back for that first showing, and boy, it was that was when downtown was alive
Rocking.
and well,
And, it was great, you know.
and like many towns across America, you know, that's through the years it suffered when malls started going up on the edges of town.
And highways.
And highways
around.
started bypassing and so forth and so on. The downtowns tended to suffer. Very few, but there's some civic-minded and forward-thinking people in these towns have made it happen and brought it back.
Mhm.
And I know that there are a lot of people here in Waycross that would fit that description, civic-minded and forward-thinking and all, but for one reason or another, it just has not clicked in our town. And I miss that old downtown, just the feel of it, you know. I mean,
Well-
that was my life, you know, growing up as a child was.
And if you lived downtown as a child, I mean, it was a different world. You could walk from your house to downtown. You could hit every theater, every little soda counter downtown. I mean, you know, you spent the whole day there. I mean, you know, I think I remember at one time I was running tours, historical tours of just all the different sites and stuff through town. And I think at one point there were 54 passenger trains that came through Waycross. And back in like 1929, there was all these articles published about how Waycross was going to be the new Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
It didn't happen, did it?
No, it did
Something
not.
went wrong.
Yeah, I remember that statistic. Seemed like size-wise, Waycross, Savannah, Augusta, Columbus, we were all at one point. We were all the same population, and you look at all of them and how they just blossomed and grew, and here we are still
Well,
sitting here. But there's a charm here.
Yeah,
there's still
I'm,
a charm
I'm,
here.
I'm glad
I don't know
what
if
it
it's
is,
such
you know.
a.
I wish we had a better, and people are trying, so I'm not trying to talk bad about it, but you know, if downtown would pick up a little bit, I mean, I'd love it here, and I'd rather live here than Atlanta. I'll tell you that.
Well, you're right. Right now, especially, you know, Waycross is interesting in that, and over the years, it's what's made me sad is I think we still have as big a pool of talent as we ever did. But there was a time, and I'm sure you remember, I'm not saying there aren't a lot of bands and there's not a lot of performing and stuff going on, but it's not the same as it was. I know back when Nancy Campbell was with the Downtown Waycross Development Authority, you know, we were hopping down there.
Yeah, it
the
was.
young people had a place to go. The theater people had a place to go. You had bars that you could go to that were open, that served food, and it was all there together. It was very convenient, and we just don't have those things. I think that if you could reintroduce some of those things, people might actually go for them. But you know, it's been a long time, so these other people, they don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
Well, it has been, and I could see a resurgence. Sure, I mean that could happen just as easily as it didn't happen. You know, all we got to do is have a few people make some right choices. You know,
Well, you know, I think that if we can get a few things going that I'm starting to see happen, if Georgia stays film friendly, and if things continue to come back here to be produced, that could help just in that, you know, we have a lot of features. You know, the
Yeah,
topography is very unique here,
Mhm.
and instead of coming to this area and shooting, wetland scenes, they're still going to Louisiana and stuff.
Mhm.
Well, if you're, got a studio in Atlanta, it's a heck of a lot better to come down here
Yeah.
and do
Mhm.
that wetland stuff than it is to go all the way to Louisiana. I'm not knocking Louisiana. I have had a
Yeah.
great time there.
Mhm.
Woo-hoo, Mardi Gras, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
have
the fact that we just had that major movie come here, or
Yes,
Mhm.
that was Waycross, wasn't it?
yeah,
That was right here
Robert
in
De
our
Niro
county.
and-
Robert De Niro and
right.
John
Malkovich.
Malkovich.
They did some the background scenes. I don't think Malkovich or
They weren't ever
De Niro
here.
De
was
Niro made
actually
it,
here. Yeah.
but the film people actually did come, and
Some, the fact that this town is kind of lost in time in some areas, that like the downtown and the swamp and everything, it makes good for film, I would think.
oh yeah,
Mhm.
oh yeah, and I think that the people at the swamp are starting to think progressively about really taking advantage of that unique
Mm-hmm.
area that they've got. So I see positive things. Like I say, I'm really hoping that we can bring Lydia back to the stage in the fall, and that will lead to something bigger and better beyond that.
I can can't understand why that hadn't been made a movie by now. That would that seems to be just a great story. And Graham Parsons' life,
Right.
that would be a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's already been that. What was his
Grand
dad?
Theft.
Grand Theft
yeah,
Parsons
Theft
was
Parsons.
more about his afterlife than anything, and it was a black comedy, and but a really good movie on his incredible life and Lydia Stone. My God,
Well, there's a lot of people, and then you look at people like Obadiah Barber, and there's just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
of
the
good
Wiles
history here.
Massacre,
Right.
all of that.
I mean, like I say, again, I'm partial to Lydia because of, I mean, how many people do you know rob a bank of their own money? There were bank holidays during the Depression. And so she rode in with Doll Baby armed. And when the door was locked, she beat on the door till somebody came. And we're sorry because she pulled her gun out. She always carried an Alhead 38. She came out with her money. And
Well, get my money.
supposedly she took it and buried in little places all over. And people for years would go out there to where those big oak trees are right there, where 121 and US 1 come together. That's where her home was. And people would go out there with metal detectors looking for those cans of money, supposedly. But
Wow.
Yeah.
121 and US 1, that's Hoboken, right? Ain't
well,
that right?
yeah,
Or
right before
121?
Folkestone. So 121, when 121 comes past, the road going down to Slaughterville, High Bluff Rock Road.
Yeah.
If you take a right on that and you come to where
So, High
121 meets
Bluff-
US 1, there
Yeah.
was a convenience store there for a while. Well, there was a big, grand
US
wooden
1.
house that was
US
That's
there.
right. I was thinking about Highway 80.
Right.
82.
And
82.
that house burned down, and Doll Baby died the next day.
Oh, double whammy.
Yeah. Turns out I found out during the last production that I did that he and I are cousins.
You and Doll Baby?
Yeah, because both of us were adopted by other people, and we did not have our original last names. Both of us, our original last name is Corson.
Wow.
And we share a common grandfather. He's another great to me or something.
Yeah.
But his name was Alonzo Corson. And so Doll Baby and I were family. So that was really cool to find out that I had been writing about
it's
family. It was a
personalized now.
kindred feeling all this
Mhm.
time. And I probably should have figured it out. My family's burial plot in High Bluff is on the same row as Lydia. I should have figured it out. But,
Well, that's where
awesome.
my family is.
that's
All the
right. That's right.
Griffins.
Well,
The Griffins
and
are buried
of
there.
course, my son married your cousin Marie Griffin.
Marie out in Emerson Park?
Yeah.
Your son married?
Tony, my son Tony.
Howdy dog.
He married Marie. I mean, Marie's daughter, Melody. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, Marie's.
Sorry, everyone, that I have just confused about my entire family. But, hey, I'm an old man. Give us a break.
Yeah, it's real interesting. I've played some grave dedications in that cemetery, and for me, it was a real personal experience. The first time that I walked down through the centuries, and I saw the gravestones were getting older and older and older, and finally I went underneath this oak tree out there, and it was 1700s for a Griffin, and I was just overwhelmed.
Wow.
To think that
that
they went that far back.
Your lineage goes back that far,
way back. Yeah. And but
they
all drifted down, like many of them. Many of them came in Virginia, and settlers did, and they slowly, generationally, they kind of moved further and further down. Some of them get into the Carolinas, then generation go by, and they'd be a little closer to down here, and eventually, my great granddaddy Peter Griffin, and don't laugh, all you people.
Family Guy.
He was a family guy. he was raised on the Cowhouse Island.
Well, all right.
In the Okefenokee Swamp, and he ended up marrying Margaret Thrift.
Okay.
And so there it is, right there, the Okefenokee connection.
They're all, they're all somehow connected to the people who are native to this area. I mean, there's only so many families. And and it was a good thing, in writing the play, that I caught the last of those people who knew all of those people before they passed. People like Georgia McDonald, whose husband Frank had a deal with Lydia to get some money to buy something from him during the Depression, so they could go on a honeymoon. Wow. She was just a trip, and all those people. Liston Elkins, I was very lucky. He was known as Mr. Okefenokee and the first manager of the Swamp Park. Okay. And of course, he had a radio show, and I got his notes because he was at one time going to write a book, and his family passed those on to me whenever I started doing my Lydia research. So it was like, wow, just stacks and stacks of knowledge.
US 1 highway named after him,
right?
Out there, the Liston Elkins.
God bless Jean, his daughter. She'd say, "No, my daddy is not buried there."
Yeah, we used to see that marble monument, so to speak. Is it still there?
They've moved it further down.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay. I have lost touch with that over the years.
Well, it was up there around where that Millie DeShazo triangle is, and then they moved it down further.
Yeah.
And I think it's somewhere like around Walmart or.
Oh, that's that's kind of where I remembered it. I've just kind of lost touch with it.
Like by Burger King, right? Wasn't it right there?
Yeah, that would have been Millie DeShazo triangle was right about there.
He was here, the turn lanes, the Millie DeShazo triangle. God bless them, Millie.
I tell you, that was a nice little section there that's undergone some serious changes over the years. But
Lord, yes, I remember when she was, lobbying for them to do something there. I mean, she wasn't like pushing for them to name it after her.
Yeah.
I kind of think that was just a kindness because she was really pushing. She said, "We've got to do something to this."
It was beautiful. Nice. I mean, I don't know what flowers that was, lilies or what it was, but son, they would just sprout out in the spring, red, just giant, these red blooms all over, all down that little triangle right there. And
I think they had amaryllis in there.
Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Beautiful.
exactly.
And to offset that beauty, you had A&W Drive-In and a big, tall cowboy doing like this, saying,
Dude, I remember that.
mobile homes.
That's
Mansell.
first memory.
That was Becky Mansell's daddy.
Yeah.
That was Josh Kirkland's
I was so
granddaddy or great granddaddy.
And I loved that cowboy when I was little, like 3 or 4. I was like, go see the cowboy.
Lord, yeah. I remember that.
It's like a Las Vegas sign.
Yeah, it's a huge cowboy.
He was huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of it, but it might have been Mansell's.
Was it Barnes? Was it Barnes?
It could have been
I
Barnes
think
Mobile
it was
Home
Barnes
Sales.
Mobile Home that had it.
Yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure. Right before you got to the bowling alley.
Mm-hmm.
I can just remember it being Memorial Drive, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember.
You know, because we didn't have quarter Z to cut everything out there.
That's
right.
Back you just had that turn left at Millie DeShazo's. You had I guess it might have been one traffic light because Reynolds Street paralleled Memorial Drive.
Mm-hmm.
It was just over there, and you couldn't take a right at the Holiday Inn and go to it. You just went straight past the Cowboy,
right?
Past whatever was where Flash Foods and all. That's where the Cowboy was.
That was A&W.
Yeah, and then beyond that. Then okay, I got you. I
don't remember A&W. I knew we had one, but I didn't know.
Then there was the bowling alley, and then there was West Diner.
West Drive-In. West Drive-In was on the corner of you need to slide back over to your mic.
City Boulevard.
There you go.
City Boulevard and
City Boulevard, and then
a Memorial Drive.
Reynolds Street was West Drive-In was at the top of Reynolds Street. You took a ride at West Drive-In, and you were on Reynolds Street. That's how we went to church every Sunday.
We're old, Dave.
And right behind the bowling alley on Reynolds Street, there opened a bar in 1975 that we used to play at. It's called the New Bar. And this was probably before your time. Let's see, you graduated in 82.
Yeah, in 75.
So it'd been 7 years.
I was still in the 5th grade.
7 years, yeah. Yeah, but it's just fascinating the way it's changed and everything. I wish somebody had the forethought to ride around with I wouldn't care if it was a silent movie camera. An old Super 8, and just shot out the right side of the vehicle as much of a way across as you could, and then double back and go back so you could get the other side.
We were talking when we were taking down. I was helping Michael take down the stage from Swamptown, and we got to talking. And I forget the fellow who was there helping too.
Ronnie.
Yeah, I guess so.
Ronnie Denard.
And we were talking about, and somehow or another, the name Hubs came up. And he was like, "That's the name of that bar," and he had to go call somebody because they remembered Hubs. I'm like, Hubs,
that was Hub Rolling.
Hubs, you're not out. The Rock Factory. When I was a kid, I lived behind the State Patrol Station.
Okay,
my Uncle Ronnie was a big state patrolman, and we lived back behind there, so I could walk down a path and go and listen to the bands rehearse at the Rock Factory. And, actually, Steppenwolf was still together after, what's Steppenwolf's lead singer? John. He left for a while.
Yeah.
And so this was during the period he had
German,
left.
wasn't he, or something?
Yeah, and I can't believe that
I can't believe
that
I
ain't
can't
coming to my
either.
mind.
But at least
right
we got
now.
John, so we. Oh, you go, Mr.
Yeah.
But
we got instant.
He wasn't there,
library.
but as a little kid, I got to listen to Steppenwolf. There were some really good bands that came through in that era, and I would just get up after school, finish my homework and haul butt down the path and listen to them play. And they, come and let me check it out. It was great. It was really great.
Was it Tommy Holland or John Kay?
John Kay.
Yeah.
That's it.
The guy with the sunglasses.
Yep. That's it. And I've always been.
Get your motor running.
Head out on the highway. I mean, and they were good. The guy that replaced him was good, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And I was always around, some famous musicians, and I was too stupid to know whose butt to kiss. I mean, step uncle was Shot Jackson.
Oh, Lord. Now there's a historic name.
And, I remember when Shot came to town, and he and Roy Acuff replaced the roof on my step grandmother's house.
Wow.
And then they played a little concert. I mean, they literally got up there and changed shingles on.
Yeah.
That sounds like an episode of Andy Griffith or something.
I mean, and like I say, I was too stupid. Well, I was just a little kid. I was really a little kid. I'm probably 7, and I didn't know to appreciate this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the man was that. God, he's on the Grand Ole Opry, and he's on Hee Haw, and he does this and he does that, and God love Billy Ray. I get to hear the story of how Shot sent Willie Trigger every time, and I just listen because I just kind of think that's kind of cool that he thinks enough about old Shot,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you going in there triggers that one memory. I mean, you're kin to Shot, so let the story be told again.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it is. It's
for
a good
for people
story.
that are out there scratching their heads and wondering, Shot Jackson was one half of the Showbud steel guitar. Pedal steel guitar was designed by Shot Jackson, the Show, and Buddy Emmons, the Bud of Showbud, and he also did in the modern folklore, he did gift Willie Nelson a Martin guitar. I believe it was a Martin guitar, the one that Willie plays. You see, with the hole in it.
Trigger. Supposedly, Willie somehow it got stolen or lost in an airport in Texas, I believe. And Uncle Shot had a music store there in Tennessee. And so, Willie got a hold of him, and Shot said, I got something I think you'll like. And it was Trigger. And he's been with him ever since.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's the one that you see in those famous photographs
the big
with
hole.
the big hole in it where Willie's pick has scraped through the ages.
So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as far as acting goes, back to the acting now. How many famous people have you rubbed shoulders with there? Or
well, I mean, or do we want to joke and mention the Who famous I've been around, and then Who famous has died afterwards?
On account of you?
Well, I'm not exactly. I don't. If I do have this vibe, I don't mean to. But I've been fortunate throughout the years. The very first film I ever did was Andersonville, and I had and the director, of course, was John Frankenheimer, Manchurian Candidate, all just the wonderful things. I mean, everybody worked with, wanted to work with Frankenheimer, and so I did too. And that day I had lunch with this very nice unknown actor named William H. Macy.
Oh.
And we both,
Well, you didn't kill him.
No. He's still kicking. He's doing great. I did not put the kiss of death on him. I a few years later, through just some theater connections, we met Frank Gorshin, who of course was the Riddler, and Dick Van Patten from Eight Is Enough. Frank did pass not too long afterwards. God bless him. But it wasn't my fault, I swear. I did take him homemade cookies. I took some to him and to Dick Van Patten. Dick Van Patten lived a little bit longer. He didn't eat cookies. He said he was a diabetic. His son ate them. He's still alive and well. Frank may be gone, but really one of the coolest things, I was never a fan of John Travolta, but I was lucky enough to go down and work on Lonely Hearts. And you always really should kiss up to makeup and hair and costume, because they might be the difference between you just stand around, no one ever sees you, or you're in the movie actually.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody was gone. I was just supposed to do extra work. The costume lady comes in. She loves me. She says, he's a 40 regular. The next thing I know, I'm in a cop uniform. I'm doing a scene with Travolta and Scott Conn and James Gandolfini, who didn't live too much longer after that. But I did later end up doing more scenes with Travolta right next to him. I sang with John Travolta.
Really?
We were standing around. He looked, he said, man, we look like a bunch of guys in an old musical. What would we be doing? I said, oh, we'd be doing Guys and Dolls. Because I remembered that's Marlon Brando. And Travolta does Marlon Brando. Yeah. And so surely after the first, luck be a lady tonight, he goes, luck be a lady tonight. And I'm just dying. Yeah. I'm there with Travolta singing like Brando. That was just like, and then when they put us in the room where they were going to execute the characters played by Salma Hayek and Jared Leto, who we both got to work with too. My friend Larry, strangely enough, he ended up casting this film too as a minister who did last rites to Jared Leto. It was odd. Over the years, we would do auditions for these diverse projects, and out of thousands of people, we would both end up cast. It was really strange. Larry Miller, who passed away. God rest his soul. He was a great guy, but. I spent the day right next to Travolta. I mean, all day. They moved us so close, we were touching. And you know, I couldn't help it. Larry came in with Leto, and he saw me, and I looked like the cat that ate the canary. I was just like, because I mean, and the nicest people though. Salma Hayek, gorgeous, beautiful, generous, kind to everybody. Mm-hmm. Jared Leto in another land. Oh yeah, but a nice man, but in another world.
Yeah. Mm. I get that.
Yeah. And I really don't know that well. Like I say, Mary Wilson, God love her.
Okay, now she was one of the Supremes.
She was one of the 4 originals who were
not so much an actress.
Well, she actually. As the last few years, she did quite a bit of stuff. She did the vagina monologues, which I always laugh about. I just always hear the Saturday Night Live, Charlton Heston going, "I like my vagina," and you're just so I could never watch that show. I'd snort all the way through it, But anyway, she did a lot of things. She ended up she did like a lot of sitcoms and things, but she was great. And she was one of the originals. So really, when I met her,
where was that at?
The first time was down in Jacksonville. And I had read that she was real turned on by white roses. So I sent her back some white roses. And I'll be honest, I was trying to sell a song too. I mean, I'm shameless. So she said, "Oh, so you sent me that." She said, "That was so sweet of you." And I got this big kiss on the lips from Mary Wilson of the Supremes. I'm like, oh, Jesus, more number 1 hits than any other female group in history. 12. I mean,
that's awesome.
And a beautiful person.
Well, she always, to me, was the prettiest.
Yes,
of the 3 Supremes.
She was a sexy one.
Flo and Diana.
And then early on there was Betty and Barbara.
Yeah,
and they left. One had a baby. One just left to get married or something like that. And then later, it was Cindy, and then they went on and on after Diana for quite a while, and still had hit records. And anyway, Mary was just nice. We took a bunch of pictures that first time, and the second time we saw her, she wasn't feeling well, but her grandson, who I believe was with her, he recognizes, and she came out. And we signed, all my pictures and stuff. And then we saw her one more time, and she was just she always remembered who you were, and
that's cool.
Yeah, she's a great lady. And it was one of those shock ones, lately. But I swear I didn't have anything to do with it.
Now, what about you did something with Burt Reynolds?
Some great guys that I've done 3 films with in the past. They have RKS Studios over in Valdosta. They shoot independent films.
What's the name of it?
RKDS. That's Roy Kirkland and Doug Sebastian. Arcadius. It works out well.
All right.
Yeah. A clever name, Clever guys do good work. Gracie ended up, because Gracie was a student of mine, so I knew she was good. I knew she could act. I had taught her. And when I suggested her, she auditioned, she nailed it. She ended up doing the film. She was great. But those guys, they ran a film festival. And the first one, Burt Reynolds was the guest. And he came out every night and he did a little talk and he showed all his films. Well, I was, kind of like Burt's helper. Helped him in and out of vehicles and got him what he needed, and made sure that really crazy people, and there were crazy people, stalker type people, stayed away from him and kept him safe. And he was really nice to me. I mean, we joked a lot. He told me about how he and Clint Eastwood were fired on the same day. They were both under contract to Universal. And they're both sitting in front of this unnamed executive. Yeah. And he's just starting out on Clint Eastwood. He says, "Man, what can I say to you? It takes you forever to say 2 words. You got 2 words. Somebody can say blah, blah, and it's done and it's over. You go blah, blah." And look at that Adam's apple. What the hell can we do with that? We can't make you up to get rid of that Adam's apple. God, you look, And then Burt says, "Well, what's wrong with me?" And the guy says, "Well, you just can't act. Wow. You're fired, both of you. Just go." So they get up and they walk
must
out.
have been early on in their
and they get
careers.
into, they're both under contract to Universal at the time. Clint had done like Tarantula and Revenge of the Creature.
Yeah.
And so they walk out and they walk in the hallway, and Burt said, he went, "Phew, that's a relief." He said, Clint looked at him and says, "Man, what are you talking about? We just got fired." He said, "Well, the way I look at it, I can go and learn to act, but you ain't no damn way going to get loose from that Adam's apple. You got to have everybody." So, and obviously, as always, the executive was wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, God bless him. Burt did pass just a few weeks after.
Oh, there's many myths surrounding Burt Reynolds and Waycross, and I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah.
Well, it started by Burt.
Well, Burt started it sort of himself.
Okay.
And he had a really nice guy who was a producer who was also sort of his all the time assistant. And this guy was also the one who interviewed him on stage when they were there. And when Burt was shooting White Lightning, he did an interview, and they were saying, "Well, where would Gator McCluskey be from?" And he spouted out, "Oh, he'd be from someplace like Waycross." Done. Okay, so then it sinks into myth, Yeah. Then people start confusing something. This is what I think happened. People started confusing Pernell Roberts,
Burt.
I didn't kill Pernell either. But Pernell and Burt, and they were confusing the two.
Yeah.
And it just kept going back and forth. And as everybody, well, my grandma said my grandma ain't going to be no liar. Now, you call my grandma a liar, I ain't going to take you out in the street and whip your ass, Burt Reynolds is from here. So, I mean, after years of, saying, he's from Lansing, Michigan, I got him to tell me, I said, look, where I came from, everybody says you came from there. Were you born in Waycross, Georgia? He said, no. I said, okay, so your mama didn't drop you off at the hospital here. No. You didn't go into false labor here. No. You didn't even stop over and spend the night while she was pregnant. No. So I then posted the picture that Bert was so generous. He kept having his guy take pictures of the two of us. He was such a nice guy.
Cool.
And he had one, and I posted it later, and it said, one of these actors was born in Waycross. Piss some people off. But I do that. It's okay.
Well, let's take a quick break and
Sweet.
come back and maybe you play us some music.
Yeah, sounds good to me, guys.
Something in my brain won't let me stray. Something in my veins gonna find its way. Something in the water taught me how to pray. When that cold black water finds its way into your veins, you'll never be the same.
Well, folks, we're back. Something in the Water podcast with our guest this week, Mr. John Youmans, playwright, producer, songwriter, man of many talents. And I think you got a few excerpts you want to.
Well, yeah, I thought, that would probably be best, especially since I don't accompany myself very often.
All right.
And there's probably a good reason for that, But one of the things, of course, I'm working on right now is trying to get Lydia back on the board. So,
Right.
We're trying to kind of, if we can get some musicians' brains kind of saying, hey, I'd like to be involved with that. I wouldn't mind hearing from some people. And I've talked to you some about, the way the style of the show is, the opening number, which is, of course, makes Lydia sound like this big grand character. You get to this big grand thing, you think she's going to be all regal, and the next thing you know, she's all wallowed in mud from having just wrestled a hog with her bare hands and had dinner that night. So, anyway, but this is just a little touch of the beginning, and then, like I say, it has that background thing that's kind of like that Dillard sort of thing,
Cool.
But it just kind of Legend of Lydia, queen of the swamp, as strong as any man. The only woman who had the strength to tame the trembling land. The only time she wasted was 5 days spent in school. She rode down south to lend a hand upon an old red mule. Oh, Lydia, Lydia, her skirts are spinning round. Just like a black tornado, she'd come tearing into town. Lydia, oh Lydia, knew how to get her way. Old timers tell their children tales to keep her legend alive today. And then it goes on and on. And again, like I say, you're expecting this regal thing, and here she comes in, full of bars and stuff. But it's a fun thing because you've got the men going, and the women are going, Miss Lydia, Miss Lydia, Miss Lydia, Miss Lydia, Miss Lydia, tame the trembling land.
Got
all during
fleshed out.
Yeah, and they're just doing the things that normally happen in the course of, work there.
Cool.
One of the songs that I appreciate, like myself, I actually enjoy this song, was written for a friend of mine who played the character Lazy Man. Lydia, as the lyrics said, went all the way down to Miami on a red mule to take care of her sister who had a stroke. And of course, everything fell apart while she was gone and people got lazy and everything. So The Lazy Man, who was my friend Dave Gibson, who just passed. He was a great guy, and he's one of the few people I wrote a song for. But this is a little bit of that. And it goes, when the cat's away, the mice will play, and there's a great big rat asleep on the hay. He drank all night and now he sleeps all day. There'll be no rocks in his jar when it's time to get paid. He passed around that jug, boy. He drank himself his fill. Well, the wine of the Okefenokee comes from the local still. And it's basically about that. Lydia comes back in and they're all laughing, and she's like, hey, you think that's funny? And of course Lazy said, well, yes, ma'am, Miss do. Miss Lydia says, yeah, well, I'm glad you appreciate that, because you got two choices: get back to work or the long and winding road. And she snaps that whip and those boys get back to work. But that's just kind of the flavor of the way the Lydia show is. There's square dance music, and it's just sort of that period. There's a little thing that we always joke. They always say, "Oh, that's your 16-ton song," and it's a Depression number, which just has an old blues kind of thing. It says, "Worked hard on my life to get what you can by the sweat of your brow and the skill of your hands. Now all I'm wearing is all that's mine, except these blues I got since the crash of 29. Yeah. And I always said, I thought it was Stray Cat Strut I stole.
Yeah.
Well, it's got that feel. It's got both of them. Actually,
I purposely did that. I took riffs and blues patterns and things that were really familiar. Because that way
it sticks.
Mm-hmm, and you leave the show humming, thinking about that music. And that's what you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a person, who, for what I like is music, it's very avant-garde. I like it off the wall, but another just other work that I really particularly like. There was a number in Psycho, which is also a kind of a blues number, and I think of it as sort of a fat New Orleans kind of a sound. It's and it goes. Oh, sorry, wrong key helps, doesn't it? I was the #1 detective in the FBI. I put the gleam in Eddie Hoover's eye. Check the dictionary and right there beside my picture is the entry spy. So don't be pulling the wool over my eyes. I'm cooler than Jack Webb, there's no doubt. If you're hiding something, I'll find out. Look at this picture, what do you see? Do you know this girl's identity? And you best tell the truth, 'cause I'm no cheap detective, and I'm not Charlie Chan. I'm just a private dick for hire, and I always get my man. Anyway, the last time we did that, Neil Morris did it.
Really?
And when I sent him the song, he picked up the phone, he called, he said, man, I'm in. Any song where I get to say I'm a cheap dick, I'm doing it.
Oh, Lord.
So, but, that's just the kind of stuff, a lot of, one of the biggest compliments I ever got about any of the music that I did, the late Skip Sasser, God bless Skip. Mm-hmm. He was doing some songs in the recording studio where we were recording Psycho. And the guy who was engineering, he kind of said, hey, you want to hear this? This is some weird stuff. And, at the end, Skip was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And the number that he did, strangely enough, came from a theme I heard the Afghani Mujahideen sing when Dan Rather was there in the 70s. And it went, mother is my name and murder is my game. I'm a little bit insane and so's my Norman. And that was a theme that was literally the Mujahideen. So I hope that I'm not on a kill list. I did it with respect. But you never know.
Did you have something for the great shower scene?
Oh, that was it.
That was it?
When mother comes in, she's just sitting there. She's showering. She takes her clothes off. We do it so that you see her in silhouette.
Yeah.
And try to have something look pretty good in there, And it's building. And then as you hack her up. And it's so surprising how many people love death. I mean, they just
the voices that you do in that was so awesome.
Oh yeah, it was great because like mother with the mother, it's like let's see, it's like mother. Norman's like singing, Mother's back, I'm here to stay. A few more stitches and it's time to play. And it's then mother comes in saying, I hate to have to kill that little whore. You turn your back to the audience and whoever's playing mother dead, And then you leave the stage and you're on your mic backstage, and just as you think it's all over, mother rises up. And it was fun, to turn that whole thing around, I mean, I figure if you can make a joke out of serial killing,
why not?
But that's that's really the gist of the kind of stuff like I say, I'm not the greatest accompanist for myself.
I love it.
This is the instrument you wrote on, right?
Actually, the instrument that I wrote on was really teeny and tiny and had fallen and broken so many times. It had clothespins glued where some of the keys were.
Oh, wow.
And that was where I went and I had this little thing that would do 2 tracks. So I did that. And then I went to somebody else who had a large PV DPM 488, which was, state of the art at the time, floppy disk and all that stuff, And I did each number there. And oh gosh, I learned a hard lesson one night. I caught the flu as we were doing it, and I slightly overdosed on cold medicine, and so I did this one number. It's a mystery, which is the sister going to the house right before she discovers, Norman's dead mother. And it sounds so trippy. It could have been on Magical Mystery Tour.
Man,
it could have been on the White Album.
You still have a copy of that?
Oh yeah, I'll let you hear it sometime. But it was fabulous. I call it the Robo Song. But and Melissa West loved the fact that I did that way because it made it so that she could take her time getting up the spiral staircase and take her time coming down the spiral staircase. I mean, I could have done 3 instrumental verses for her and she would have been fine, but bless her heart, She's like, it works, John, it works. So that's all that mattered.
Well, that was awesome. We appreciate you sharing that.
I appreciate you guys.
That little bit with us there. Yeah. Kind of gives the audience a glimpse into
and
just it's just the basics, the bare bones of any production.
Right.
Anything is the germs of the ideas that we get, and
you can pull it back if you need to.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and of course, those ideas, that they start little and tiny, and then you can, especially something, like a stage production, it can grow.
Oh yeah.
And then when you see what doesn't work, you can come and subtract it and add other things. And I mean, I do miss, just getting out there and doing straight music. I mean, I really miss that. That's one of the things that is like, oh, if I could just scrap it all, what would I do? And I just, go and do music and. Yeah.
Speaking of music, did you play in any local bands when you were coming along? Did you do any stuff like that?
Well,
like we all did.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. Not a tremendous amount because I came along at the point in time where there were a couple of things going on in music. Disco. I hate
yeah.
abhorrent. And progressive rock. which was just so, it's like, oh God, I don't want to have a degree to play this kind of stuff, and I'm not talking like Zappa. Zappa was, that was experimental progressive, and I could really enjoy that. But I didn't want to hear, but these overcomplicated bands, it was just too much for me. So, of course, when the punk movement came along and it threw back to the garage bands, I was in heaven. Took me a while to talk some people into, okay, we don't have to play only Leonard Skinner. Let me let you hear this band called the Ramones, and try to talk you in this Clash, and then the Sex Pistols, and then and Patti Smith and the Talking Heads and all that stuff, and more experimental things. Getting into. Thanks, I'm Babbitt Mikes. I'm old school. I'm old school theater, so we project. But yeah, I like experimental music. I like the avant-garde. But I really enjoyed that throwback to the garage band sound.
Yeah.
The things that were like the Count Five and the Standells and the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Love that old stuff.
I love that stuff.
Me too.
Getting back to the origins.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, folks, I guess it's about time for another Tale of the Week. That's TAIL of the WEAK. These are little stories from my childhood and out of my mind. And this one is aptly entitled The Piano Man. Got a picture of me, Uncle Dave, and the new piano from 1965. That's my dog Sport in the background. Let me exercise my right to read.
Oh, I relate. I had to put them on just to see keys, so I got you.
Landreth Trevathan Laughinghouse, or LT as we called him, was my uncle. He was a weightlifter and bodybuilder early on in his young adult days and a larger-than-life figure in my childhood eyes. There was always that faded newspaper clipping that Mama would pull out and read to us about the Waycross man who ate 24 eggs, a pound of bacon, a loaf of bread for breakfast, washing it down with 2 cases of 6.5-ounce Coca-Colas. This was superhero status as far as I was concerned. LT married Mama's sister, Quita, in the early 50s. Shortly after, they opened a small grocery store out Albany Avenue in Waycross, Georgia, calling it Little Star Food Store. As a child, a trip to downtown Waycross was not complete without a visit to Little Star, where we would find candy galore, Marvel comic books, and an old chest-type Coke container filled with soda bottles resting in ice-cold water. LT and Quita's home was just 2 houses down from the store, and when we visited, Uncle LT would almost always showcase his musical skills on the family's living room piano. He would have me stand right next to him as he played, grandly cascading and crescendoing up and down the keys, the whole time smiling and staring me in the eye. That part was just a little bit weird. It was Uncle LT and his piano that provided the impetus for my first piano lessons during my 6th grade school year at Memorial Drive Elementary in 1965. As a military brat, I was quite used to uprooting and moving from town to town, from one school to another. In 1958, I entered kindergarten and spent all but the last week of 1st grade in Tripoli, Libya. Then we moved back home. My final week of the 1st grade was at Memorial Drive in Waycross with Miss Barwick as my teacher. Daddy was immediately relocated to Turner Airfield in Albany, Georgia, so I entered the 2nd grade at Isabella Street Elementary in Albany. When he got stationed in South America later that year, Mama moved us back to Waycross for the second half of the school year at Memorial Drive. My teacher was Mrs. Hosendorf, and I have long forgiven her for threatening to put me in the book closet for being a slow reader. My 61-62 third grade year was spent back in Albany at Turner Elementary, 4th and 5th at Sylvester Road Elementary, then winding up back at Memorial Drive as Daddy headed off to Vietnam, leaving us behind on Dog Hill for a glorious year with our best friends and kinfolk we dearly loved. As I was sitting in Ms. Dill's 6th grade class one day, an announcement was handed out that piano lessons were to be offered in the school lunchroom twice a week. So there I was, perched on a piano bench with my John Thompson's Modern Course for Piano book, my instructor guiding me through the fundamentals of scales, hand positions, and note values, while my less fortunate classmates were stuck in Georgia history. Over the next 3 months, I spent a lot of time at the Laughing House, practicing what I learned at school, until one afternoon, Mama surprised me with a beautiful mahogany upright piano with the name Harvard engraved just above the middle C note. She bought it in downtown Waycross from Bradshaw's Appliances, which primarily sold washers, dryers, and refrigerators. I think the Bradshaw Appliance store in 1965 may have been where Crosstown ended up. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I know that was Bradshaw's at one time, and then it was Scotty's Drugs. And
across from the Ritz.
Right across from the Ritz. So it could have been Scotty's Drugstore by then. And Bradshaw reopened on Carswell, right across from the bank there. At the end of the course, I played the last song in the first book, Dublin Town, at my piano recital. That was the end of my piano lessons. But years later, when I got serious about music and songwriting, I was able to use those keyboard fundamentals in bands and in the recording studio, and they served me well. But unfortunately, outside of Button Gwinnett, I don't remember a whole hell of a lot about Georgia history. The end.
Yay. That's great, Dave. It's great.
Well, we want to thank you, John, for coming on with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of y'all for coming back and watching again. And be sure and email us at our somethinginthewaterpodcast at gmail.com.
And we have a Patreon. You can check that out. Rate,
review, like.
Yeah,
subscribe.
Just don't rate my keyboard playing. Love my ideas, not my playing.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
When the cold black water finds its way across through your veins, it just might seal your fate. It just might seal your fate. It just might seal your fate.